Good morning. It is October 18th, 2020, and I'm going to do a very quick walkthrough of the FDR small scale gardening exhibit that's within the home garden at FDR. We're close to the Hudson River, so we had 31 degrees this morning for about 3 hours. So because it's close to the Hudson River, it moderates the temperature a little bit. But I suspect this is going to be the last walkthrough of the season, simply due to a more than likely killing frost of the vegetables. There's a presidential library. It's been closed because of COVID. And then facing the presidential library is the reestablishment of the original Roosevelt Estate home garden. And we harvest twice a week, and all the crops are donated to a local nonprofit, Dutchess Outreach, and they sell the produce and then use the proceeds to benefit their programs. On the left is a field of medium red clover that we've established to improve the soil and to also let the soil rest for one season. So a quarter is kept fallow to improve the soil. So we're coming up onto the small space gardening exhibit. Been attempting to do more signage. It's been hard with COVID because I can't do large group lectures or large tours of groups. So this is the main entrance with all of the purple martin birdhouse gourds lining the entrance. I'll call out the crops as I can. These are scarlet runner beans that are on the trellis. And then shishito peppers. They're a Japanese hot pepper, medium in heat, with some calendula. And then a pyramid garden with parsley, Chinese cabbage, lettuces, some kale. Then 2 potato bags, kale, and then a wall of loofah gourd, which creates the loofah sponge. And it's also edible when it's large cucumber size. Asian cuisine will slice it and put it in soups, stews, and also wok or stir fry it. These are big containers that had very tall 10-foot popcorn in them. Here's a display of just techniques to protect crops from both cold weather and from critters. So I just tell people to protect the crop. Don't worry about trying to keep the animals out of your property. This is just a plastic trough 6 feet long. It has drain holes in it. And at the bottom it has a 2-inch layer of stones that act as a water reservoir. So the roots never dry out. Then walking through, there's the hanging garden. I call it the hanging garden of FDR. It's all set up for greens, but it makes it a convenient height to work, and it also is up off the ground, off of ground-dwelling critters such as rabbits and other ones that can't climb up, such as squirrels and chipmunks. These are grow bags that are bottom watered, so the vegetables, they just soak up the amount of water, they draw up the amount of water that they want. So this was popcorn in here and some pumpkins that trailed out of the bags. There's a pumpkin there still. I've harvested quite a few out of here already. And then going out through the Eleanor Arch, this is the newest arch, and it has, it's all grown out with Chinese asparagus beans, red and green. I call it the Eleanor Arch, as there's a birdhouse gourd growing on it. So there's housing for birds, and the beans are food for people. So I think Eleanor would totally approve of an arch that feeds people and houses birds. This is a lath-roofed seating bench. So this is all set up and designed for a designated space to start seedlings outdoors. It has automatic watering, so that once you plant the seeds, it's hands-free. They're automatically watered twice a day, 6 a.m., 6 p.m. And they're in those flats for about 3 to 4 weeks. And then you use those seedlings to fill in lettuce that you've harvested from this, what I call the Daily Greens feed trough. It's a stock animal feed trough. So there's 30 heads of lettuce in there. You pick a head of lettuce every single night, and then you have 7 heads to replace each week. So you just take a plug, a seedling plug from the lettuce flats, and fill in what you've harvested. And then also in this greens bed is kale, spinach, beet greens. So you also harvest those daily to add to your salad. You don't cut the whole kale plant. That just keeps growing larger, and you just harvest leaves from it each day for your evening salad. And then also in here is also a 2-inch water reservoir. That's just a sight hole so people can see that there's a 2-inch water reservoir at the bottom of that trough, and it has drain holes, so if it rains or if it's overwatered for whatever reason, the excess water just drains out. That was a crop of okra, green okra, in the fields. And this still is, a Mel Bartholomew square foot gardening display. How he set up for square foot gardening. He was the most prolific writer for about 5 decades in the States of vegetable growing techniques for home growers. And here's fava beans. They're grown as the primary cover crop basically in the States. They're nitrogen fixing, so they improve the soil. They're a broad bean. And this is a row of lima beans. And then we'll walk back into a small space gardening exhibit. And this is all along a row of Dutch buckets, modified Dutch bucket. Dutch bucket is a hydroponic system. I modified it. So I put soil in these buckets. It has to have some peat moss or some peat humus or coconut hair, to basically sponge or wick up the water from a rain gutter that's underneath. And then at the end here is a float valve, just like in a toilet. So it automatically maintains the level of water. So you never have to water these plants. And the ideal thing of bottom watering is the plants only absorb the amount of water that they want. There's a cabbage, so you can see the size. This cabbage is way past harvest size. It was about 7 pounds, and you can see it's growing small cabbages inside now. But the buckets grow large, full-size vegetables. It's not like the buckets diminish the size of the vegetable at all. And these are eggplants. We harvest twice a week, so we've picked here fairly heavily. This is vertical trellised tomatoes. So I prune off all the leaves up through the developing fruit cluster and strip off all the suckers. And that orange line follows just one stem. its growth from this season. Then you see it comes back and doubles back on itself. So that's about 15 feet or so. Trellis tomatoes are a great way to culture tomatoes because they're up off the ground. They get good air circulation, so there's less problems with mold and mildew. And then when I get to the top, I just lower them down and I move the stems either to the left or right as I lower them. Excuse me. This is the kids' Veggie Hut, just built with a umbrella frame put up on hardwood stakes, and these are Martin birdhouse gourds. So they grow all season, then you take them inside, they dry out on their own, and then the only thing left in them is the seeds, and just cut a 2-inch hole in them, and they make a birdhouse for the purple martin bird, which is a voracious eater of insects. I call this the feng shui wall. As people come in the main entrance, they have to stop. It blocks their view of what's inside the garden, so it kind of piques their curiosity a little bit. And then when they come to the wall, they have to make a decision. Am I going to go left or right? So it kind of gets them into the moment. And this is the signage that greets people, the Roosevelt Small Space Gardening exhibit. Continuing along, this is a display of tomato culture for 2-stem tomato culture. So all the leaves are stripped off, and then the plants, when they get to the top, again, they're just lowered down and the stems just trail on the ground. By pruning all the leaves and pinching off the suckers, all the energy of the plant goes into producing fruit and ripening it, so that it's not spending energy in creating a big jungle of leaves. These are straw bales, and in the straw bales I planted red okra, peanuts, calendula, nasturtium. The straw bales start out in the spring, and I drill holes in them and put in compost starter. They start heating up to about 135 degrees for 2 weeks. Then as they start coming down to 90 degrees, I put transplants into them. It's not a system that you can put direct seeds into because the straw bales compost through the season, so they get better and better in terms of growing medium throughout the summer. These are just about ready for us to till in, to plow into the soil, improve the soil. The straw bales are nice though for rocky soil or an area that you have a lot of weeds, or just to lay out for a general design of a garden before you commit to actually putting a garden in. And stepping out here, small space garden. This is a sheet of plywood that I just made into a tiered herb garden. So it's vertical. You don't get splash of rain soaked dirt onto the leaves. It keeps them clean. And you can put a variety of herbs in one area so that you can harvest, a variety of herbs all in one space. No weeding. And it just makes it very convenient to have everything in one location. And this can go up. You can take this up as high as you want. I mean, you can go up a story or 2 stories if you have a way to reach it with a ladder to harvest. But it's nice. It's fairly maintenance free. I have an automatic soaker hose that just waters the top, and then the water just percolates down. I'm going to step back from a small space here and do a pan. And on the left side here, as we're facing the garden, is a grain garden. So I added that this year. These are all grains, so going counterclockwise. There's red amaranth, there's golden Chinese amaranth. Over to the left, in the back quadrant, was sweet corn, which is all harvested, and I put it in a stalk, just a gathering of all the stalks together. And then on the outside of the grain garden was quinoa, the short crop there. It's all dry now. Is the quinoa. And next to that is a sorghum. And the chipmunks and the squirrels have harvested all the heads of the sorghum. And then to the right, lower corner, is oats. And I have a crop of fall sweet corn coming in. So we'll see if it survives the frost or not. These first frosts are always spotty. We're close to the Hudson River. Sometimes the Hudson River modifies the temperature and we don't get a hard killing frost. This is African keyhole compost garden. It's called African because it was designed for drought areas. So you take all your kitchen scraps and you place your kitchen scraps right inside the center here. And there's a wire cage, and the earthworms work in and out of that wire cage. So surrounding the wire cage is soil. And so the earthworms do all the decomposing of the vegetable matter and the kitchen scraps that you have. So you can put in eggshells, egg cartons, paper, cardboard, coffee grounds, all your vegetable scraps. And the earthworms do all the work. You don't have to turn the pile. You don't have to add grass clippings. The earthworms do all the decomposition, break it down. And at the bottom then are the worm castings. So that's the end result of all of the composted vegetable scraps. They end up just into a really nice, and it's a neutral smell because it's all aerobic. There's all air throughout the system, so it never gets septic. And it's a great fertilizer for the plants. And all the plants in the African keyhole compost garden are both fertilized by the worm castings. And it's nice. It's an easy way to work at a waist height to have a small vegetable garden. It's called African again because instead of taking all your compost and putting them in a pile outdoors on a piece of dirt and losing all that moisture to the ground, the moisture all goes to the roots, all goes to the base of the plants. It's called keyhole because there's a step in where you step into the actual center to access the actual cage where you put in your compost. And this will service a family of 4 easily, taking care of all their compost needs. I suggest that people, if they build one of these, they site it right between their kitchen door and their car. So there's no excuses for taking out the daily kitchen scraps and putting them right into the compost bin versus putting them in the trash, or having a backyard compost pile that doesn't get maintained properly, so it doesn't get used. This is entering back into the main vegetable garden. So these are, again, these are Martin birdhouse gourds, and they give most of the canopy for the garden here. Right ahead here, this is a cardboard box. I covered it with burlap just to make it more aesthetically pleasing. And I wattle weaved some green sticks to make a basket, basically. But we've had lots of vegetables growing through that all summer. So a lot of times when people are thinking of building large containers, they think they have to fill it with a dump truck load of dirt. Dirt's not the best thing to actually fill large containers with. It's really heavy, and water doesn't move well in dirt. So I fill 2/3 of all these large containers with wood chips. So they're filled 2/3 with wood chips. The tomato display also in the front is filled with wood chips. And then I put a layer of compost on top of it. And then potting mix on top of that. So I've never had to weed. I've never had to weed this big box garden. And the cardboard, I put this cardboard in March. And it's fully, it's got all of its integrity still. It hasn't broken down at all because the wood mulch doesn't make the cardboard soggy. If you filled that with dirt, that cardboard would just be a soggy mess at this point in time. But the wood chips just, the water moves up and down by capillary action really well. The earthworms love it. Microbes love it. So it's a beneficial win-win situation. And it's a great way to site what you might want to do a more permanent structure in a future year. So you can put it in a cardboard garden and then get an idea of how it sights, how the sun works, how every other feature of the aesthetics of it work. And then you can commit to like a large container garden. This is the Three Sisters. So I had summer squash in here. These are a scarlet runner bean growing up it, and corn. There was a popcorn also growing in that. And this is a grow bag. This is a 100-gallon purple pool grow bag. And in the middle of it is a nice Tabasco, which is starting to turn color. And to the right of that is rubber roll roofing. It's very thick. It lasts for about 35 years. You drill it for the spacing of the plant that you're going to put into it. At the end of the season, you just hit it with a 10% bleach solution. Let it dry in the sun, roll it up, put it away for the winter. In the spring, put out a water line. Roll the rubber roofing out on top of that water line. Put your plants, take your transplants, put them right into the plugs of the pre-cut and pre-spaced holes. And then the rubber roll itself prevents evaporation of water. It's watered from underneath by, automatic timer. So you never have to water. You don't have to do any weeding. And the rubber roll itself maintains all the moisture. And the plants, they enjoy the heat. And again, so much better than using black plastic, which is only used for one season, then is tilled into the soil. And not a great practice. This is the container haul. So these are shopping bags, grow bags, recycled storage bins. All anything that's plastic has again a 2-inch water reservoir with stones in it, so the roots never dry out. And then this is a crib. I call this the tomatilla crib. So this is a crib that I build around the tomatillas so they grow up into the crib, and it gives them the support that they need from rain and wind, because they tend to be very fragile and get blown down. And I'm going to just finish out pretty much going back to the demonstration of protecting crops from animals. So I tell people they don't have to try to keep wildlife out of their property or their garden. They just need to protect their crops. So I never finished these. I wanted them to be left unfinished so that doesn't seem to be overwhelming to people in terms of construction. And this is a greenhouse light emitting plastic. It comes in 4x8 sheets called Sunlight, and you can just you can build covers out of this to cover your beds. This is early Jersey Wakefield cabbage. It's looking really nice that it's been undercover. So you would use this plastic cover basically to extend your season. Earlier you could put plants out in the spring, and keep them in later in the fall. It protects against frost. And then with the hoops also, you can just throw over plastic screening, netting, and this keeps out all of the wildlife critters, including deer can't eat through it, and keeps out woodchucks, squirrels, chipmunks, mice. And then you just roll the curtain up to work in it during the day. So these are just simple plumbing materials that are readily accessible at building supply stores. There's the first here is PVC water pipe. It's a little bit rigid, and then the one next to it, this is called PEX tubing. It's much more flexible, and it's very strong. It's just easier to bend, easier to construct. So you can put this over any plant structure that you have. And if you don't have a boxed in section, you just have a dirt raised bed, you just simply pound a smaller or a larger pipe in the ground and then fit your plastic tubing over that. And the same thing too with the Dutch bucket system. You need to provide some protection from animals. So again, I would recommend that you put hoops over it and just cover it with like a blanket, in the sense of plastic animal netting to keep the critters out. But this system waters itself, so you don't have to ask neighbors to watch your garden. And basically all you're doing, you're not pulling any weeds out of these buckets. You're just harvesting. And there's some eggplants there that got by harvest. So you can see it grows full-size vegetables. And that's a wrap pretty much for 2020 in the small space gardening exhibit. And we're going to be moving the whole exhibit back to the rear of the garden, to the far west, and giving it more of a permanent site. And just close in a shot of my brother John Rubin's rope pump bicycle powered design. So we're going to be mounting a bicycle this for adults and children to understand kind of the dynamics of moving water. So this is an ancient technology, rope pump. It pulls water from up to 25 feet from a well. And we're going to have it so it pumps from a large bucket and then basically pumps it up to a tank. And then the kids can measure how much plants actually consume of that water during the day. So, all right, happy fall, happy winter, and see you in 2021.